Hello and welcome to the Macon Atlanta podcast, where we are in conversation with Atlanta community builders and innovators. I'm your host, Brent Macon, and today's episode is with the luminaries behind the soul dance movement, Scott Houston and Maya Lemberg. Soul dance is an ecstatic dance movement here in Atlanta, and this episode is perfect for anybody who feels like they might need a little bit more of the sacred in their lives. Maybe a tugging ache that things aren't quite right with our modern way of living and that there's something that we might be missing. Maya and Scott's prescription for that is freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and creating a safe and sober place where people can move their bodies on the dance floor and be together in community. So I learned a lot from this episode, really resonated. Hope you'll enjoy. Thank you, Maya and Scott. Without further ado, enjoy the episode. What has soul dance taught you that no leadership training program could prepare you for?
Just the care and the immense responsibility you have to step into when you're holding a space of community leadership, to really run everything through like our own heart's integrity, first and foremost, and tune into what feels right and what is the best choice in every situation that it cares for our community, but is also respectful of ourselves and our mission. It's a balancing act, and it's a real balancing act around. We're a spiritual community. We're a local, like, creative, embodied community, and this has to be financially sustainable.
Sure.
And that piece is the one that puts a wrench in all of it, because we would love for it to just be a giveaway thing, and for us not to need it to be financially sustainable. So how do we create something that feels honoring of our time and energy, and which is really quite immense, what it takes to consistently put on these experiences and events, and be accessible to the community, to the people that really need these spaces. So yeah, figuring that walk of, spiritual community offering and, capitalism, essentially.
Yeah. You mentioned the way that it feels to hold a space like that and the level of intention that you have to have. How do y'all feel right before an event? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Are you silent, prayerful? Is it a combination of things?
It is all of the above. I'm never not nervous before holding space, but I also know that feeling wouldn't be present if it wasn't something that I was meant to be doing or needed to be doing. And that feeling, that nervous feeling that I get, also helps to catalyze the voice that I need to have. It helps to ground me, even, which is a weird thing to say, like, to be simultaneously be nervous before something and to also be grounded and to be confident that I can be hollow enough to speak truth.
Does it feel like performance energy? Does it feel like channeling energy? Does it feel like a spiritual expression? How would you put words to?
It's more channeling for me.
Same. Yeah. Hollow. That was the right word.
Yeah, even with, the music curation and the performing music as a DJ, selecting the music, it needs to be, it needs to provide people with an experience and a journey. And a lot of the times I'm not preparing as much as I would for a party, for an example. It's like I'm just letting my heart choose music that I know needs to be selected. So yeah, it's more of a channeling experience. And even the words that I'm saying in the facilitation of the experience.
How long is that process, and what does it look like?
Which process?
The prep?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting ready for, you're putting on one particular soul dance. How far in advance do you start preparing? What does your process look like for bringing it to life?
Well, there's a lot of pieces here. If you're speaking about preparing the music, that's its own
Yeah,
piece.
I was more thinking of the actual, call it ritual, ceremony, spiritual element of it, the music, the space holding, the language that you use, a little bit less of the business and the marketing and sales.
Yeah.
It's honestly, that's something that gets more refined every time we do an event. Yeah, over the years, I've learned that soul dance has its particular way that it exists in the community, and my curation process for it musically also it's become more refined. Like, I get better and better at it. Time wise, anywhere between 2 and 10 hours. It's the musically.
For the music.
Yeah, because I'm always downloading music. I'm always listening to music and considering where might this fit, who might this be for, and sometimes I'll download music today and I might not use it for another 5 months. So it's just a constant puzzle that's being put together.
Yeah. The night before, he will be immersed in that process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And regarding the ceremony piece, it's really just completely channeled. What I typically do is, every event has a theme, so and that's decided on, a while ago, and we tune into like the energy of what that theme is, and what's the pulse of the moment, like what's needed here collectively. So like in my meditation several days before, like I'm kind of creating this like protective field over our space, wherever the venue is going to be. And I'm imagining it. I'm already like kind of like casting this like light field over it, and tuning into like what's happening in our community, in the world, in the region. What's the theme, and how can we create a space that that is in service to whatever is emergent for people in their process. And to be honest, this often happens when I'm driving to the event. Like things can kind of crystallize of like, that's it. Like I don't typically listen to music, or if I do, it's like pretty meditative. And I'm in this like prayerful kind of meditative process while I'm driving. 'Cause as soon as I get there, we're just
It's go mode.
go.
Sure. Yeah.
Unload, set up, like there's not a lot of time. And depending on the size of the event, for the larger events, the Soul Dance Presents, we'll try and like have like, like a little 5-minute meditation before everything actually starts, to just like ground.
Do you have an example of one where the energy of the moment, what was needed in the collective, as you mentioned, came together with a theme that was particularly poignant, or it stuck out? Like, can you help that come to life for me?
Yeah, let me think. Yeah, like the first couple of months of the year, there was just such a instability and a fear happening in like this collective space. I felt like people were like in hiding, and the socio-political climate is so
Heavy.
Yeah, heavy, even like scary, and I was just tuning into this like just gentleness just this like sweetness and gentleness that was really needed for people like to feel safe and held and to be able to just relax and come undone in this like nest. So a lot of my language was around compassion and allowing and yeah, like everything felt like really like it needed to be like soothed in like a sweet warm balm, to as an antidote to the amount of aggression that our senses are assaulted with through media and through the socio-political climate. And there was a meditation I was leading, dropping people into presence and really feeling into the heart of compassion. That felt so just like deep and loving. Like there was just this love that was so palpable in this space that felt like it held everyone through the beginning and into the end. And I'll start everyone off with a meditation, and then I'll close the ceremony with a group prayer where we end in gratitude, and then we send the collective energy to whoever and wherever is needed as an offering from our community to the world.
Yeah, that's an awesome segue, because I was going to ask if you could describe what ecstatic dance is and what a soul dance. Do you call it a ceremony? Do you call it an event? Do you call it another?
Both. Yeah. I mean, they are monthly ceremonies.
Ecstatic dance is it's a practice. I consider it to be akin to, sitting down to meditate, but it's an active meditation. It's an active way to practice moving through the world. So I'm a 5 rhythms teacher, and the 5 rhythms is a movement meditation that was created by a woman named Gabrielle Roth many years ago. And the 5 rhythms sort of trace 5 different energies. Flowing, which is very feminine, it's very receptive, it's gooey, it's sensual. Staccato, which is the exact opposite of that, it's very masculine, it's very straight, it's like it's you're going to get something. Chaos is sort of an amalgamation of those 2 rhythms. It's very you're releasing, it's very tribal, it's cathartic. Out of chaos comes lyrical, and lyrical is like this, it's a breath, it's piano, it's violins, you're dancing in the clouds, and then after lyrical you come down into stillness, and stillness is very spacious. It's you're sort of becoming one with everything, but you're still moving through it. And the 5 rhythms, as you're moving through it, create a wave. And it becomes this very natural process. The wave exists in everything. It exists in this conversation. It exists when you eat a meal. It exists in relationships. So 5 rhythms has existed for a long time. And like dance as something that exists in society and in the world, it's timeless. It's, people have been banging drums and moving their hips since at the beginning of time. So ecstatic dance, I feel like somebody found a way to put words to it, and Gabrielle Roth as well. Like she found a way to really modernize this practice, this way to be more human together. And soul dance, because I am a 5 rhythms teacher, the rhythms, the wave exists in me. It's just how I am. It's how I move through the world. And as I curate music for soul dance, it naturally reflects in that process. A lot of ecstatic dance floors don't necessarily adhere to that. Like there's, every DJ is different. Every DJ is going to do it their way to some degree, but also ecstatic dance floors they tend to lean on the 5 rhythms because that's the most natural way about it. Am I answering your question?
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, is ecstatic dance a brand? Is it a type of dance? What makes a dance ecstatic dance versus not?
I wouldn't call it a brand necessarily, but it is it's a way to move your body in space where you're not judged. No one is looking at you. There's no substances of any kind that are present in an ecstatic dance floor. The music is specifically tailored to take you on an experience. Like it starts very spaciously. It'll get to the high peaks of energy, but then it should take you back down again. And, when you go dancing in any other place, you start out with the boom booms, and that's generally it.
It's free form movement.
Yeah, free form.
Yes. So no experience required, no choreography. It's a safe space where the intention is to be present with however your body wants to move in the moment as it meets the music. And the music is designed to take you on a journey through the low and the high, and then and back down. So there's spaces to really explore your different emotions, whatever stuck energy is inside of your body that maybe wants to be released through breath, through movement, through sound. It's a space to practice authenticity in your way of moving, as well as gives anything that needs to be released inside of you a place to go. And we're all doing it together. It's not necessarily a social thing. Many people have their eyes closed the whole time. There's a pretty standard rule across ecstatic dance communities of no talking on the dance floor. But plenty of people do connect, because that could be a really beautiful part of their process, to connect with someone else, a friend on the dance floor, and have an exchange. But this is a place where people come to express, to heal, to commune. Many people in our community call it dance church, and soul dance is its own brand. We've created a unique offering, and our offering is more ceremonial. We are really big on properly inviting everyone into what's happening here, orienting everyone to the space. I'm a somatic psychotherapist, and I lead with that. I really intend to create a trauma-informed, safe space for people, and welcome all of the parts of us that want to show up here into the dance, and have the meditation, have the closing prayer, and it is secular to the degree that a lot of what we're talking about is presence and kindness and gratitude and things that are very just humanistic. But we also are grateful for all of creation and the breath of life that weaves through everything.
Yeah. What do y'all love about it?
I love the community that's formed through this offering that we've been stewarding for the last 5 years now. The community it's truly a massive part of the thing that I love about it. So many of my people are in the soul dance community, and
has that been people that were in your community previously who have now found a form in soul dance, or people you've met through soul dance?
Both.
What's that looked like?
Both, yeah.
Some of them, yeah. And then obviously in the last, since there's before COVID and now after COVID. So before COVID, some folks have moved away. Some people are just not in the community anymore. And since we've been doing soul dance, there's just so many people that are just near and dear to our hearts that are within our immediate sphere.
I love creating I love creating sanctuaries of expression. Like, I've been involved in so many different projects over my life, and soul dance is such a thriving collective of people. And I see people that come for the first time, and I'd say every event we have maybe a third new people every time. So it's always expanding and growing. And many people, this is their first introduction to any alternative community. And it's life-changing to be able to see adults express themselves freely,
sober,
be like in connection. Like, there's so much love and sweetness and expressions of gratitude and like all around weirdness and silliness and like people even just witnessing. Like, a lot of my clients come and I invite them because community is everything, and like one person cannot equal a community, and having a place where you feel like who you are is just received and accepted no matter what. There's such an ache for belonging through so many people, like just an ache, that I only belong if I fit the mold, if I act like this or not like that. So I have to like divorce myself from so much of my authenticity, because then I can't get my needs met of belonging and love and respect and all of that. So like really, like whoever you are and whatever walk of life you come from, like be real and you are met here. So that piece, like creating this space for people to be like, wow, like I had a client come and it was so intense for her to even just be a witness to what was happening in this space. And she came a couple of times, and the first time she was way back. She's like, this is as far as I could come in. And then she came in a little bit closer, and eventually she got to being able to actually be on the dance floor with people. And over years, like this led to her like breaking out of her armor that she's been wearing, that has led her to be, just tight and bound, and able to discover who she even is if she's not having to operate under these confines.
That's another thing of just like witnessing growth in people.
Yeah.
The arc, the wave, just witnessing true evolution and expansion.
Lives changed.
Yeah. When do you all see that? Are you conscious of things like that happening from your vantage point live, real time?
Yes.
Or are you talking about in conversations afterwards, debriefs, both?
Both. As facilitators of the space, like you're aware of a lot, but it's just a sort of a general contextual thing that I am aware of, like because of myself, my own personal journey. I've grown since we've started this whole thing, and I see that reflected in other people that have been showing up since the beginning, and other people who, a year ago, they're different. It's incredible.
You see the same people come from the beginning, and you see their evolution, just, from, being nervous and a little tight and stiff and being off to the side by yourself to,
and then they're the main ones throwing down.
Being just fully expressed and, wrapped in hugs and love by other people in the community, and then like people finding their people and friendships and marriages and children happening from meeting people at Soul Dance and other communities born from those connections, like that is just so beautiful and so rewarding.
How did y'all get here? I'm curious, both kind of practically and then the longing that led to the creation of Soul Dance.
How far back do you want to go?
I got nothing but time.
Origin story.
Okay. Well, yeah, born and raised in Mississippi, Vicksburg specifically. Went to University of Southern Miss.
And Scott, if you don't want to unload the truck here, you don't have to. Like whatever feels, present.
Well, I it's like how far back, because it's all relevant, right?
Sure.
But
Maybe start with when your spiritual awakening started happening, because that's really here.
So I lived in LA for 3 years. I was a game tester for Electronic Arts, and at the time,
Every kid's dream job.
Every kid's dream, like to sit in a room and play video games constantly. However, I was eaten alive by the corporate structure that it was, and found myself working 50, 60-hour weeks, and it was not a healthy life that I was living. I was not in a good place spiritually or mentally. In that process, I found myself naturally gravitating towards readings and materials that would slowly begin to open my eyes to a different way to perceive reality and the life that I wanted to live. So I found myself researching things like shamanism and the Peruvian Amazon, and just being pulled towards what would eventually become a more heart-centered life. In 2009, it was in the middle of the financial crisis that was going on at the time, and EA basically fired the entire division that I was working in, and it happened on my 28th birthday. And that, which was also my Saturn return. And I don't know if you're familiar with that astrologically, but that tends to bring about drastic change,
upheaval,
life upheavals, and I had already booked a flight down to Peru before this project was complete, but EA sort of releasing me was a natural end to that part of my life, and I went down to Peru for a period of 6 months where I sat with ayahuasca that entire time.
He was apprenticing with a shaman.
I was an apprentice for a shaman down there, and that, as it does, changed me forever. I left the Amazon not knowing that I didn't want to go back to that life, but not really knowing where I was going to end up. And so over the next couple of years, a lot of driving back and forth across the country, I sold the majority of my things that I had at the time, and was living in Canada for a period of time. I lived in Winnipeg for about 8 months. I actually came down to Atlanta for a wedding. This was around 2010, 2011, that period. I lived in British Columbia, out on the land, in the mountains.
Santa Fe.
I lived in Santa Fe for a period of time. Just finding myself, not needing to be in one spot, and just wanting to find freedom in whatever way that I could, and eventually it was New Year's Eve, 2011. So it was January 1 of 2012 was my first official day that I moved to Atlanta. One of my best friends from junior high school, his roommate had just gotten married, so there was a space here that I could call home for a little bit. That was the first time I'd really grounded anywhere since I left LA. And that was me moving to Atlanta, and eventually the next month I found what was the Five Rhythms community at the time, and I really had not experienced a practice like what the Five Rhythms is before, and I was like a fish out of water. I knew in that moment, the first time I stepped into the dance floor, that this is gonna be what would carry me through the rest of my life. That was the beginning of what soul dance is now. Finding that community that to some degree still exists today. Yeah.
I'll add on to Scott's story. Scott was a really very serious trumpet player for a long time, professional musician. So that runs just in his being. But Five Rhythms led to him learning to DJ. And that opened it all up, which is essentially how we're here now. He was facilitating ecstatic dances and Five Rhythms classes and DJing other, events and parties as well, for a while, I guess since 2014 or something like that.
Yeah, self-taught, and learned to DJ because of the gravity that I felt towards how the music was making me feel in the process of, being on the dance floor, and just wanting to know, like, how can I potentially not manipulate the experience, but how can I curate what's happening more towards what I feel like I need. And that's what led me to really begin to want to learn how to DJ. I didn't have any of this stuff. Definitely a child of technology.
Yeah, and for anybody watching or listening, you can probably see the full-on studio that we're in Maya and Scott's home, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
And got every toy that you could want if you are DJing. So.
Yeah.
A lot of toys here.
When did y'all meet?
Are we doing that story? I don't know if we're doing that whole story. But we've been together since 2017. And we were friends for the first couple of years of us knowing each other. And so we've been... I was with Scott in like the early phases of him really coming into this whole path and stepping more fully into it. And then we got married in 2019. And then 6 months later, after our wedding, the pandemic started. And I'm going to kind of wrap up the soul dance origin story. That's when everything shut down. We participated in some Zoom dances, and we're really not impressed with that experience. And Scott was just like, we got to do something. We just got to do something. So summer solstice of 2020, we decided to have a park open air dance. And we went to Candler Park, which was the park in front of where the Five Rhythms classes always were. There's a little church, there is. And we put out a Facebook event, invited friends. Scott had 2 speaker tops at the time, and that's what we brought, and a little table for check-in. And I think we had 75 people come, which was, I thought, a great number.
It was a huge dance
for
what
and people
the community was at the time.
Were just so grateful and so relieved. They've been inside for now 3 months, not seeing other people. This was the first dance event locally since it all began, and this, we all had been through so much stress and fear and unknown and all of that. And the people that wanted to, feel safe and keep distance were able to on the big field, and then we just realized that we had to keep doing it. Like this was the service. So we did it every 2 weeks. Out there in Candler Park, rain or shine, winter, all the months. And we kept doing that there for almost 2
years.
years. And City of Atlanta just was kind of shut down. Like, no one was doing anything anywhere, and there was just no policing, really, of what was going on. So we just kept showing up at the park and doing what we needed to do.
Fortunately, flew under the
Flew
radar.
under the radar. And eventually we had to get our shit together and become a real operation, which we did around the same time as our child was born. We like really developed this into an enterprise. And
was there an inflection point or a moment where you said, all right, this is real, we're going to make it an enterprise? To your point, we're going to put our, a large part of our professional energy into this. Was there a time you knew, or was it a gradual evolution? What did it look like?
In speaking for myself, it was always a big part of what I was doing. Like it was feeding me creatively, and it was a big reason for me to not feel the weight of what was happening so deeply, because I knew it's like, we got another dance coming up. I gotta get ready for that. We're gonna continue to put that out. But like Maya said, it was around
it was probably a little bit before that. Yeah, I was 2021. So a year and a half into us doing these every other week dances, we LLC'd. We had some help. We built. I think our website got up and running.
Yeah.
Probably right around the time of Rael's birth, which is our son. He was born in March of 2022. We talk about soul dance as being our second baby. It was really actually the first one.
Yeah, soul
Rael
dance
was
is
born.
the first baby. Rael's the second.
Yeah. So and then we just got like a crash course in it all because it grew so fast. Like a couple of years in, we're now looking at, average 250 person dances, which unheard of for the Atlanta community to have anything like this. Atlanta has had a conscious dance scene for a minute, but never more than 60 people per dance. That was, and Scott and I have talked about it a lot, like, why so little? Like, how do we make it grow? And there was just the right conditions, the right time, the right branding, and it just blew up. I think to both of our kind of dismay. And it was a little
Why dismay?
It felt like it just happened really fast. Like people were kind of starting to treat us like local celebrities, and we're like, what is happening right now?
It's true. It was a crash course. I had not really run an official business before like that, and it was really learning the ropes through the fire. There was a lot of lessons that we've sort of had to withstand over the years, and we're stronger for it. But yeah, running a business like what this is it was a learning experience.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We've had some good help.
Incredible help.
Where's that come from?
We've had people that we've hired as contractors that are just operation wizards. Know how to create systems, streamline processes, like keep everything in track. Like we have epic spreadsheets now and Google Drives full of very tightly organized folders of every event that we've ever had and all of the media.
Wouldn't work without any of those things.
All of these things that, like, I'm a therapist, I run a private practice, and we're creatives and healers. Like, this is not our forte, and we've had to learn.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm curious what it's been like for you all in partnership, both on a very dedicated spiritual walk and also in now sharing the running of this enterprise. And for quick context, just so you know where I'm coming from, my wife and I got married in 2016, and I was in kind of the height of maybe what you articulated around. I was in the corporate grind, and didn't really have a deep relationship with spirit in that time. And we deliberately like didn't have any Bible verses in our wedding ceremony or any mention of God, because it always kind of bothered me when it felt like people just did that to like check a box or even performatively. I was like, either this is at worst blasphemous, or maybe it's just not real, right? And so we weren't going to do it if it wasn't real. And then if you fast forward, 10 years later, like God is in whatever you want to call God, your conception of God is a pretty like central element of my life. And my wife and I have shared a lot of that walk, but I also wonder, like, what if we didn't? Like, what if it's like, oh, this isn't quite how we signed up for what we signed up for? Is there kind of a limit to where one of us can go, or a direction one of us can go? What does that look like in partnership? And so I'm always curious for folks who are on a spiritual partnership, a spiritual path and in partnership. Has there been a season where one of you kind of went a different direction than the other, or felt like growing together or apart, or maybe experiencing it in a different way that you've had to navigate together? And then obviously yours is taken a step further by being co-creators of this spiritual ceremonial experience that you're offering for people. So wide-ranging question, but just curious how that has been navigating it for the two of you.
I'll start with saying that fundamentally we share all of the same values, spiritual and otherwise. And spirituality is so like central in my life and always has been, that I knew any partnership that I will be a part of in my adulthood, like that has to be central, because it's literally the frame through which we see reality through. So if we are seeing a different reality, I don't know how that could possibly work. And that is like, that's our ground, that like we see life through the same lens, and we are like fundamentally, like our soul is like made of the same fabric. And all of the other stuff, like personality stuff and, behavioral and history, and like it can be worked through, because that like ground is so strong. And we know that we are ultimately like the same, like we're spiritual family. And sometimes I'm on an accelerated growth path and I am like in it and doing the work, and Scott's like taking a back seat and taking a break from all of that stuff. And then sometimes it's flipped. So we're not always like at the same pace doing the same stuff, and that could create a little friction. But like we're still on the path together. And then weaving that into our business. And I feel like one of the things that I bring to it is really when we get too much in the weeds of business, like pulling back and seeing it from ultimately this deeper transpersonal spiritual frame of like, well, what are we actually doing here? Like other than moving numbers around and packing our cars full of gear, and like what are we really doing here, and grounding us into that.
Can relate.
Yeah.
And making space for what matters, because this is an event production company, and the amount of details of running, having, up to 5 to 7 events in different stages of production constantly, it's a lot.
Do you have a prep?
Yeah. To add on to that, Soul Dance, the entity that is Soul Dance, it wouldn't exist if it weren't for, the paths that we are simultaneously walking, and where both of us have been on our own respective journeys. Like it wouldn't be what it is without the combination of those two things, right? Like, if I had done this with somebody else, like it just wouldn't be this. So, it's just such a beautiful thing. And,
It's an expression of who we are.
It's an expression of who we are, not only as individuals, as individual artists, but also like in our relationship with one another. And I'm so deeply, like, I'm profoundly proud of that it has grown to the state that it is now as an expression of our partnership and our love. You know, it's a beautiful thing. Like, it is our first child. And, you know, all the other things like that Maya was mentioning, like when we're in the weeds of it all, it becomes difficult to separate date nights from work meetings.
Legit.
You know, like, because a lot of the time when we're together and we have the time to actually connect together,
precious.
It's like, okay, what are we going to do about, you know,
What about this?
what about this?
that?
What
I was
about
going to
that?
ask if you all
Problem
have
solving.
specific processes for making sure you do take that step back that you mentioned and reconnect to source and relationship, and do you separate it? How do you
We're
navigate
working on
that?
it.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Constantly.
Yeah. Going away helps.
Sure. Change your
Yeah.
place, change your pace.
Going away helps. Doing not this, doing something else. We have other things that we're a part of that really feed our souls and bring us closer to each other. You know, we still have a little human that's so dependent on us, so we don't have a lot of freedom. Our son is 3 and is just, he needs 200%.
Sure. Does he come to Soul Dance?
He comes to some soul dances. We'll bring him to the ones that are outside in the park. And it's just a long day, so someone needs to be able to, like, pick him up and take him home. 'Cause between setup and breakdown, he's not able to hang that long. But hopefully, the older he gets, the more he'll be able to just come with us, because there's so many children there.
I long for the days when he'll be an active participant throughout the whole thing. You know, I'm looking forward to it.
He wants to come.
He knows what we do, and, you know, I see him, I see it in his eyes when he knows that we're going to Soul Dance. He's like, I want to go too.
Yeah.
How
He'll be
how
coming
does
to
it
the next
work
one.
for kids? Are kids invited? Are they included? Are there some where they're
Kids are always
100%
free.
encouraged.
Sure.
There's some special events that are adults only, but all of our regular dances, kids are free, and it's just kind of, we're a family. We really want to support families. This is a place where families can come. Mom and dad can let loose. The kids are running around, playing with each other, having a ball. The outside ones are the most child friendly, but our new space, Ambient Studios, is a really large venue, and there's just a lot of room for free play. Yeah, it's always been a part of what happens at Soul Dance. It's family friendly.
I want to touch on the specific felt need for participants and kind of how we got here, and then maybe a little bit of Atlanta community as well. We talked about, you used the word de-armoring, or removing armor for someone who's participating. We've also mentioned that it's a sober space, and that the 5 rhythms have been here since the beginning of humanity. But then also we find ourselves in this world where we seem to have lost touch with a lot of that. And we are clenched or wearing this armor where maybe people who don't feel like they can freely move their body uninhibited without alcohol or some other substance. How did we get here? And how do we break out of that in a way that allows us to reconnect to what it seems like we always had?
How did we get here regarding being clenched and armored? Oh, well, that's a whole
That's a big
history
conversation.
lesson. I mean, industrialization, essentially, you know, ownership of land and property, and then people, and I mean,
The need to pay taxes.
All right, I bit us off with more than we can chew in the
long
remaining time.
answer.
And the remaining time.
No.
But regarding, what to do from here, one-on-one healing and one-on-one spaces where people feel safe to really get into some of the work, such as therapy, or other kind of healing modalities is really important, and communal spaces of that are really grounded in acceptance, and space for expression, preferably that are diverse, because diversity is really core to the soul dance community and is one of the things that sets us apart from other communities in the world like it. And it's an expression of Atlanta, which is a very diverse community. There are people of all races and genders and ages and nationalities and walks of life, and it's a part of the feeling of safety, that this is a diverse place. So whatever I look like I'm okay here, and that's a part of the sense of belonging that we're wanting to cultivate, for people to come in and just be like, yeah, like one of the things that I sometimes say at the end is like, if this is your first time, and even if this is your last time, and you'll never come here again, like in this moment you belong in this circle, in this collective, like as a human here with breath in their lungs. So cultivating safe, diverse, compassionate spaces where people can drop into just the simplicity of the moment and of togetherness, and remember what it feels like to belong to the human family.
Yeah, I made some notes. I got to work on that, a better question for that. But I was looking for a bit of an acknowledgement of the condition that we often share that creates the need for something like
it's
soul
true.
dance.
Like that's how we get to this place of like not being embodied, is like, the corporate overlord that
Yeah,
it just runs through our society. Like we this need to crank out a product, or this need to show up for something else that's not actually serving us.
Yeah, well, and I speak a lot around societal conditioning, and how it moves through generations. And every generation is able to slough off a little bit of the past, if not a lot of it. But there's still like traumatic imprints of that conditioning that we're having to like move through, and a lot of that, whether it's given to you through religious structures or class systems, like you get a frame in your family of origin of this is what you are supposed to be, regardless of who you are naturally. And if you are lucky, you're in a family that is able to recognize who you are naturally and uplift and support it. But many of us, our parents did the best they could, and schools and social structures, and you are given a frame, a model of what is success, and good luck, fit into it the best of your abilities. So many people don't even realize that they've spent their life trying to contort their bodies into shapes unnatural to who they are. That's why sometimes when people come to soul dance, like it's like they're taken aback, because it's one of the first times they've seen people not do that. I'm a dancer, and I've been a dancer my entire life. And I remember being in high school, like in the cafeteria lunch line, and I'm like practicing some choreography in my mind and kind of like marking some steps as I'm waiting in lunch. And like my friends were like, "What are you doing? Stop that." And I'm like,
Don't move your body.
don't move your body for the love of God. People are going to look at you. But that was like this example that I remember in my mind. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, don't do anything out of the ordinary. Don't draw attention.
Yeah. I run kids gymnastics gyms professionally, and it's a franchise, and it's a business. And in many ways, we have a playbook, and we got to clean the bathrooms at night, and we got processes, and we got to clock in and out and be at work on time. But then we have to also remember, like, you got to crawl around and be a dinosaur. And we're interviewing folks right now, and literally my business partner, this guy's really great. I think he's got the systems to really help us think with a lot of structure and streamline. She was like, will he act like a T-Rex when we need him to? And I was like,
Yeah, but does he play?
yeah, exactly. Does he play?
Does he play?
It's so easy to lose that muscle.
Play. That
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that word, babe. Like, it's so much of it is about like recovering a sense of play,
Yeah.
which is why we love the children at Soul Dance.
Yeah.
They teach us.
Yeah,
Totally.
they teach us.
Yeah.
Especially at the end, when we are kind of gathered in a big circle, and if there's a lot of kids, they'll be in the middle. And they'll just be running around, they'll be screaming and just being human babies, like they're just being themselves, and we get to witness it.
And be like the actual container for it. Like
Yeah.
they're in this circle but of all the grown-ups. It's really sweet.
And every time that has happened, or something like that has happened, I'm just reminded, like, yeah, this, where we get the reminder of that, like especially when all of us are just so open after having, played around and danced and moved and shaken a bunch of stuff out,
Cried.
The defenses are down a little bit.
the armor is gone.
Yeah, the armor is gone. One of you all used, when we first spoke, the spiritual underground of Atlanta. Maybe half kidding, half serious. I don't know. Maybe totally serious. What has it looked like for you all practically to cultivate a spiritual community that's maybe slightly countercultural, relevant to the dominant systems and religious hierarchies that we have in the American South? What have been the channels for that in Atlanta? When has it felt life-giving? When's it felt hard? Just really curious how that's gone.
It is a pursuit of, let me rephrase. I know that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing in my heart. Like, this is my calling to some degree, to be cultivating the community that we're cultivating. And, it's going to continue to evolve. The state that it is right now, it is what it is, and it's going to end up being, it's going to just continue to evolve. It's been a challenge in that, I want for as many people as possible to see this and to see themselves in the experience of it, and that doesn't always happen.
Accessibility is really important.
Yeah.
Like ease of entry. We do try to not create a lot of like barriers by being too use of language is really important. There's lots of new people that are trying to find, some kind of spiritual community or place to just come and be free and express themselves or explore. So we don't want to scare them off by using language that is not understandable unless you're in like a niche underground.
There's like a bridge too far.
Yeah.
There can be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find that line?
Intuition.
We're all, it's an evolving sort of line, you know.
Yeah.
I literally have the question written down. Is there a line beyond which being too mainstream would compromise the essence of soul dance, which is, I guess, almost the other way.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are other businesses that in some ways we have a lot of like respect for as a business, but if we did that, we would be sellouts. There's
Can you give me an example? Or?
You come to an event and you have like a whole wall of sponsors, and you get the goodie bags of all the sponsor stuff and like advertisements everywhere, and you know, and they make money, and they're able to scale, and they have like a really solid operation, but like it feels really yucky. That feels like
it would be out of integrity.
Selling out. Yeah. Same with the idea of franchising, which we've tried and we've talked about before, but because like what we do is so like, it's like an expression of our souls. Like we just feel like that's it, holding the container with the love and care and like respect that we do for now is, not that other people can't, or we can't teach a model or a system of how we're doing that, and that is a possibility, but I would hate to see it just like, okay, run free, and
Sure.
then
Yeah, I've done one of these with Elsie Brotherton, the CEO of Highland Yoga, which franchised and then stopped franchising. Steve Karst, the CEO of King of Pops, which is in the process of franchising. Yeah. And then the Little Gym that I'm a franchisee owner of went from, is now taking on private equity investment, which kind of just changes the nature of what it feels like to be in that space too. So I can totally appreciate that. Now you got to
deliver, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a short time in the early days where we had a branch in Chattanooga, but Scott was driving up for every event, and he was still kind of holding it there.
It wasn't really making sense.
Yeah, you're like, why are we doing this again?
We stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we did activate the Chattanooga dance scene, and now it's like thriving.
Now Chattanooga, it's Ecstatic Dance Chattanooga, and they have incredible events up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what about for your own community development and the spiritual community that nourishes you all and galvanizes you all in Atlanta? Like, how have you found and cultivated that? And again, this is a little bit of like an N=1 question, because oftentimes I'm like, all right, I'm not sure I'm all the way there with some folks who I find who are in a much more countercultural space than I. But then in kind of the mainstream normal rooms, if you will, I'm like, oh, this isn't me either. So just curious, what does that look like for you all to find your people and your lane in Atlanta?
Outside of soul dance, or just?
I was thinking outside, but really both. I mean, if the answer is it's soul dance is a concentric overlapping circle with our spiritual community, that's.
I've been involved in the spiritual underground in Atlanta since 2007, probably.
Can you define spiritual underground?
An evolving definition. What was a lot more underground is a lot less underground now. At the time, let's see, 2007, I was 22, and I was putting on events that were similar to the discussions that we're having around how to become the most evolved versions of ourselves and recreate a world that we want to see that is more beautiful. And every month we would do different topics, different events. We'd even do festivals. It was called Evolver. And I, through that, met a lot of other leaders. Some of them are native elders, priestesses, keepers of land and sanctuaries, community space holders. And I was just a baby, so I was just like lapping up all of the information, and joined a community of priestesses here in Atlanta, then started learning the old ways of doing women's circles. And that was a really core thing for me. And I started doing ritual and ceremonies on every new and full moon, equinoxes, solstices, working with goddess energy and cross-culturally goddesses throughout different parts of the world, and doing a lot of learning and healing. Learned about the shamanic community here in Atlanta, and there was a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies. There still is a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies happening. Started participating in those. Not on Facebook, not
Sure.
something that you're gonna like find in the loaf. Like
So much of that now is like it's on Instagram.
ish, but
Yeah.
but not then. Not then. I would not have come across those things if I didn't find the pocket of people, which is essentially how we met. Is through and it was people across that were in the yoga community, in the kirtan, in the shamanic community, in the dance community, but were interested in the sacred in all things. And however it expresses itself, and from whatever culture you're grounding that wisdom from. And it's usually blended for most people we know. There's tantric practitioners that are also really like big in South American shamanism, and people that are into, Christ consciousness and Jewish mysticism, and like there's a lot of like blending.
What's the convening mechanism for somebody who's into Jewish mysticism and South African shamanism to get together in Atlanta?
I call it grab bag spirituality.
Sure, that's a great name. For grab bag spirituality, what is the convening? How do those people get together in Atlanta? Is there?
That's me. Here I am in one grab bag.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like, it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the fucking same. It's all the fucking same.
And those people are seekers.
We're
They're just seekers. They're seeking.
We're seeking truth. We're seeking
the
beauty.
sacred.
We're seeking the sacred. We're seeking the experience of remembrance of who we are.
And there's the phrase "find the others." When the path is a lonely place.
Can be.
At the end of the day, it can be. It can be a really harrowing, sometimes scary. It's like you don't know what's going on, and it just feels so much better when you can find other people who are also on the path. Mm-hmm. It may not be the same path, but they're on the path. And the soul dance community is so many people on the path together. Yeah. We happen to be dancing on the path.
We're dancing on the path and making music and being weird. But yeah, those were some of the early days. Right now, I'm working with an amazing high priestess in California, and am in another priestess circle that's virtual, and we meet several times a year for deep work retreats. We were in Joshua Tree in November. I'm going out to Santa Barbara in August for my priestess ordination. So I feel it important for me to be inside of like a process, inside of a container where I'm constantly working and growing and developing my spiritual gifts, and working out my shit as well. Like I have, shadow work and things that don't serve me in my personality that I'm always working out as well. So, bringing psychology into whatever personal growth process is really important for me as a therapist.
Yeah. I'm walking that, and I've been in a number of predominantly men's group containers, almost all of which have met online and then had a retreat component too. And part of me thinks that's really nice. Like the internet being the connector that brings things that traditionally were underground or not available. And all of a sudden you can kind of do the work and meet your people and find them. And then part of me feels odd that it's like, does that need to exist in like a separate it's not in the physical space that I move through on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month here in Atlanta? Like, does it need to be separate? And I've wondered if I should bring those together. And then, I've even had guys say like, it's really safe that we don't know each other in our actual day-to-day lives. We're not going to run each other at Trader Joe's. And that makes us more easily able to bring our stuff and work through it in public.
Yeah.
So
So I do want to just kind of speak to that. I have like 2 other local women's priestess groups that I'm a part of. So like I do find value of like sitting in a room with people and feeling their energy and having them in my life. And we make magical things happen together and create, and like they're my friends. But I think both are important. It has shifted for me since stepping into a space of more visibility and leadership, where I'm not as involved in other people's things as much as maybe I was before, where I had a little bit more anonymity. So just speaking to the
because of your time, or because of your degree of being comfortable in those spaces?
I think my degree of being comfortable in those spaces. Yeah. I mean, I'm in general, I'm pretty choosy of like where I go to be vulnerable.
Yeah, that's the one thing about, I'm doing this podcast work and I'm putting it online, and I'm like, but I don't want to go out in public and be known. That would be terrible.
It's a whole thing, right?
Whole thing. How's that been for y'all to navigate?
It's just, like I said, it does change things a little bit.
It's a lot. I'm a deeply private person. I also choosy with whom I share things with, and this is a vulnerable practice in and of itself, like having this conversation for me. But also, I'm kind of in a place now, as I get older and as we've continued to evolve as humans, as people on a spiritual path, there's something in me that knows that I need to start like sharing more about what's going on inside, and as it pertains to like my process, the way that I create this community that we're here talking about now. I feel like it's important, maybe more than ever, because of what's happening in the world, the fabric of our society, I believe, needs more things like what soul dance is. So it's important that us as stewards of soul dance speak, are more vocal,
and are involved in our own like work, that we're always like growing and working on ourselves and being held and supported, as well as doing the holding and the supporting.
Yeah. And also you're one generation bridge. Think about from Vicksburg, and what do folks in that community in the time you were born have access to and not have access to, compared to what your son will have access to.
Yeah.
And you're bridging that in your life.
It's insane to think about. I've always been open since I was as early as I can remember being on this earth. Like, I've always been open. I've always been just willing to like take in information that wasn't the standard, that wasn't just what was being shown to me as the way that I needed to be. Like, I've always been that way. And so to find myself on this path that I'm on now is not a surprise to me internally, but I get it. It's at the face value level, it's like, wow, it's kind of crazy where I've come from.
Yeah. And I'm a Ukrainian immigrant. I wasn't born here. I immigrated here as a refugee with my family as a child, so like came from a whole other world, like in Soviet communism. So to have the freedom to live in such a open way is such a blessing, and healing past generations and creating privilege for future ones.
Yeah. This is a whole side note, another conversation, but I think we got to be really careful to not throw the baby out with the bathwater on the freedoms that we do enjoy to get to pursue the lives that we want to live.
100%.
Is a real blessing.
I'm very grateful to be here right now.
Yeah. My last podcast that I recorded was with Gene Kansas, who commercial real estate developer in Atlanta, and then is doing a bunch of work in the Sweet Auburn district in Atlanta. And then he reframed the podcast. He was like, you're creating history. He's a historian. He goes, you're creating history. You're creating artifacts that people will give to their kids. Your kids are going to watch these, and whether something happens to you or not. I was like, I don't know if my kids will, but maybe. And so I appreciated, I've been thinking about just the linkages that can happen between what we're saying today and who's going to come along and pick it up and take it and listen to it. Yeah. And so with that, I'm curious if there's just a final message that you'd like to offer to anybody who's listening to this and maybe feels that tug or desire to be more in touch with the sacred in their lives.
Mm-hmm. The little voice that often gets an override by all of the louder voices in your head, create space for the little voice. And that little voice might lead you to more of your curiosities, more of what helps you feel connected and alive and a part of the magic of life. Protect the tender sprouts in the garden of your spiritual life, because there's always something, else that needs doing or tending to. But I can't imagine a more gratifying path than one that is in pursuit of the mystery.
The body is wiser than I believe most people give it credit. And when we dance, specifically in spaces like soul dance, any conscious dance floor, you have an opportunity to practice being a human. And it's so valuable, the time that we get to have on dance floors. And so I just want to encourage anyone listening to this, if they find themselves on a dance floor, or not even on a dance floor, if they find themselves with some extra time at home, move your body. Let your body move the way that it wants to. And I can personally guarantee that you will find your body gives you different kinds of pathways with which to perceive the world around you. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Brent.
This has been awesome.
This is lovely.
Yeah.
Hopefully felt more natural than a TED Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That is our show today. Thank you, Maya and Scott, for coming on. Thank you for what you're enabling in Atlanta and beyond. Thank you to all of you all who are listening to Macon Atlanta. Thank you for journeying with us. Today is our last episode before a short break. There's going to be more coming on that soon. You can stay tuned on Substack at MaconAtlanta.com or on our Instagram page, and we'll keep you posted. As always, appreciate you journeying with us. You're doing great out there. Talk to you soon.